September 14, 1965. Universal Studios, Stage 12. Doris Day was rehearsing a scene for the glass-bottom boat when she heard a sound that made her blood run cold, a dog crying in pain and terror. What she witnessed next would ignite a fury in America's sweetheart that would destroy a man's career so completely that he would never work in Hollywood again. Martin Fletcher, assistant director and 15-year industry veteran, had just struck a golden retriever named Charlie with a metal clipboard so hard that the animal collapsed on the soundstage floor. What Doris did next wasn't just a response to animal cruelty, it was a masterclass in using star power to protect the innocent and why some actions have consequences that last forever. Within 4 months, Martin Fletcher would be unemployable in Hollywood, his reputation destroyed, and his career finished permanently. This is the story of what happens when cruelty meets compassion and why America's sweetheart had claws when innocent creatures needed protecting. Martin Fletcher was a respected assistant director at Universal Studios in 1965. He'd worked on major productions for 15 years, had strong relationships with directors and producers, and was known for running efficient, disciplined sets. Martin was considered one of the best ADs in the business, recalled former Universal producer Ross Hunter. Directors requested him specifically because he could handle complicated productions and keep everything on schedule, but Fletcher had a darker side that few people saw. He was a perfectionist who demanded absolute control over every aspect of a film set, including the animals used in productions. Martin treated animals like props that had to perform perfectly on command, explained former animal trainer Bob Weatherwax. He had no patience for the natural behavior of living creatures. The incident that would end Fletcher's career happened during filming of The Glass Bottom Boat, a romantic comedy starring Doris opposite Rod Taylor. The scene required Charlie, a beautiful golden retriever, to run across the set, pick up a newspaper, and bring it to Rod Taylor's character. It was a simple action that animal trainers had been working on with Charlie for days. But during the actual filming, Charlie became nervous under the bright lights, and with dozens of crew members watching, he kept dropping the newspaper halfway through his run. Charlie was just anxious, recalled trainer Jim Stewart. He knew what to do, but the pressure of filming was making him hesitant. All he needed was patience and encouragement. Martin Fletcher had a different approach to problem solving. After the 4th failed take, Fletcher stormed across the set toward where Charlie was standing with his trainer. "This is ridiculous," Fletcher snapped. "We're burning money because of an incompetent animal. Sir, he just needs a few more practice runs to get comfortable with the cameras," Stewart began. "He needs to learn that there are consequences for not doing his job." What happened next would be witnessed by over 40 cast and crew members and would haunt Martin Fletcher for the rest of his life. Fletcher raised his metal clipboard high above his head and brought it down hard across Charlie's back with such force that the crack echoed across the soundstage. Charlie yelped in pain and terror, collapsed to the ground, and then scrambled under a nearby equipment cart, shaking and whimpering. The entire soundstage went silent. Cast and crew members stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. But no one was more shocked or more furious than Doris Day. "I've never seen anyone transform so quickly," Rod Taylor recalled years later. "Doris went from sweet and gentle to absolutely terrifying in about 3 seconds. Doris rushed to where Charlie was hiding, kneeling down to comfort the injured and frightened animal. Her voice was soft and soothing with Charlie, but when she turned to face Fletcher, her expression was ice cold. "What is wrong with you?" she asked, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "It's just an animal, Miss Day. We have a schedule to maintain." "He's not just an animal, he's a living creature who deserves to be treated with kindness and respect." Fletcher's response revealed the arrogance that would cost him everything. "Animals are here to work for us. If they can't do their jobs properly, they need to be corrected." "Corrected? You just assaulted a defenseless animal with a piece of metal. I disciplined him. That's how you train animals to perform." Doris stood up slowly, and everyone on the set could see that America's sweetheart had been replaced by something much more dangerous. "Mr. Fletcher, you have exactly 5 seconds to apologize to this animal and promise never to hurt him or any other animal again." "I'm not apologizing to a dog, Miss Day, and you don't give orders on my set. Your set. This isn't your set anymore. You're finished." What happened next would become legendary in Hollywood animal welfare circles. Doris walked directly to director Frank Tashlin and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Frank, either Martin Fletcher leaves this production permanently, or I do. There will be no movie with both of us involved." Tashlin was in an impossible position. Fletcher was a key crew member, but Doris was the star who could make or break the entire production. More importantly, Tashlin had also seen what Fletcher had done to Charlie, and he knew that animal abuse was both morally wrong and potentially illegal. "Martin," Tashlin said carefully, "I think you should gather your things and leave the lot. We'll discuss your future with the studio tomorrow." Fletcher's face went red with rage and humiliation. "You're choosing her over me? Over a dog?" "I'm choosing basic human decency," Doris replied. "Something you clearly know nothing about." As Fletcher was escorted off the set by studio security, he made a threat that would only make his situation worse. "You'll regret this, Miss Day. I have connections in this industry that you can't imagine. When I'm finished, you'll never work with animals again." Doris's response was delivered with quiet finality. "Mr. Fletcher, you just made the biggest mistake of your career. You hurt an innocent animal and then threatened me. Some people never learn when to stop digging." Don't forget to comment below and let us know what other inspiring stories of standing up for animals you'd like to hear about. What Doris did next proved that when America's sweetheart decided to protect the innocent, she fought with everything she had. That evening, Doris began making phone calls to every director, producer, and animal trainer she knew in Hollywood. But she wasn't calling to complain about Fletcher's behavior. She was calling to ensure that he could never hurt another animal again. Doris was systematic and thorough, recalled animal rights advocate Gretchen Weiler, who worked closely with Doris on animal welfare issues. She wanted to make sure that everyone in the industry knew exactly what kind of person Martin Fletcher was. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, stories began emerging from other productions where Fletcher had worked. A cat that had been roughly handled during a romantic comedy, a horse that had been struck with a riding crop during a western, dogs that had been shouted at and intimidated during training sessions. It turned out that Martin's cruelty wasn't an isolated incident, explained former animal coordinator Ralph Helfer. He had a pattern of abusing animals that went back years, but people had been too intimidated by his position to report it. But Doris wasn't just gathering information, she was organizing a response that would change how Hollywood treated both animals and the people who hurt them. She contacted the American Humane Association and provided them with detailed accounts of Fletcher's behavior and a list of witnesses who had seen the abuse. She reached out to the Screen Directors Guild and formally complained about Fletcher's unprofessional conduct and violation of animal welfare standards. Most importantly, she began quietly informing directors and producers that hiring Martin Fletcher would mean they couldn't hire her, and that many other animal-loving celebrities felt the same way. Doris made it clear that the industry had a choice, recalled former MGM executive Dor Sherry. They could work with Martin Fletcher, or they could maintain their relationships with the stars who cared about animal welfare. It wasn't a difficult decision. The effect was swift and devastating for Fletcher's career. Universal Studios terminated his contract immediately, citing conduct incompatible with studio standards. 3 other studios that had been considering Fletcher for upcoming projects suddenly found other assistant directors who were better fits. The Screen Directors Guild launched a formal investigation into Fletcher's conduct and placed him on a probationary status that effectively blacklisted him from major productions. Martin went from being one of the most sought-after assistant directors in Hollywood to being completely unemployable in less than 2 weeks, observed entertainment journalist Army Archard. But the most damaging blow came when the story reached the animal-loving public. Word spread through animal welfare organizations about what had happened on the Universal lot. Local newspapers picked up the story, and suddenly Martin Fletcher was being portrayed not as a professional film crew member, but as an animal abuser. The public reaction was swift and brutal, explained former studio publicist Helen Ferguson. People wrote letters to studios demanding that Fletcher never work again. Animal rights groups organized protests. Even Fletcher's neighbors in his residential area began treating him like a pariah. Fletcher tried to defend himself, claiming that he had been training Charlie and that Doris had overreacted to standard animal handling procedure. But the witnesses to his assault on Charlie told a different story, and Fletcher's reputation was destroyed completely. Martin tried to spin what happened, but there were 40 people who saw him strike that dog with a metal clipboard, noted former crew member Mike Salamone. You can't lie about something that many people witnessed. The final blow to Fletcher's career came when the American Humane Association announced that they would refuse to certify any production that employed him in any capacity. That AHA certification was essential for any film involving animals, explained former association representative Barbara Carr. Without it, insurance companies wouldn't cover the production, and studios wouldn't take the risk. Martin Fletcher was finished in Hollywood. By 1966, he had left Los Angeles entirely and was working as a production manager for industrial films in Cleveland, Ohio. By 1968, he was out of the entertainment business completely, working as a night manager at a hardware store. He never worked on another major motion picture. Meanwhile, Doris Day's advocacy for animal rights became a defining part of her legacy and career. She established stronger animal welfare protocols on all her film sets. She worked with the American Humane Association to create better protections for animals in entertainment. She used her star power to promote animal adoption and responsible pet ownership. The Fletcher incident was a turning point, observed animal welfare historian Mark Bekoff. It showed that there would be real consequences for animal cruelty in Hollywood, and that someone as powerful as Doris Day was willing to enforce those consequences. Most importantly, the incident established a new standard in the entertainment industry. Animals were not just props to be used and abused, but living creatures deserving of protection and respect. After what happened to Martin Fletcher, animal abuse on film sets became unthinkable, explained former animal trainer Frank Inn. Everyone knew that if Doris Day or other animal advocates heard about it, careers would be over. In 1980, 15 years after destroying Fletcher's career, Doris was asked by a reporter if she had any regrets about ending a man's livelihood over an animal. Her response revealed the depth of her convictions and the strength of her character. I have no regrets about protecting an innocent creature from someone who was hurting him. Martin Fletcher chose to strike Charlie with a metal clipboard. He chose to show no remorse. He chose to threaten me rather than apologize. I simply chose to make sure he couldn't hurt any other animals. If that cost him his career, that was a consequence of his own actions, not mine. Animals can't speak for themselves or defend themselves against human cruelty. Those of us who can speak have a responsibility to use our voices to protect them. September 14, 1965, an assistant director struck a dog with a metal clipboard, thinking his position gave him the right to abuse innocent creatures. He was wrong. America's sweetheart made sure he learned that lesson permanently. Martin Fletcher discovered too late that some people will sacrifice anything to protect those who can't protect themselves, and that when those people happen to be beloved by millions, the battle isn't fair. It's justice. Doris Day didn't just save Charlie that day. She saved every animal that would be treated with more kindness, because Hollywood had learned that cruelty has consequences. Some people become legends for their talent. Others become legends for their compassion. Doris Day became a legend for both, and Martin Fletcher became a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake position for permission to be cruel. The innocent always win when America's sweetheart is watching. Always. Because some people understand that true strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves, even if it costs the cruel everything they thought they had, especially then.